Well, hello YouTube, and welcome back to the Holtzmichel channel and another tool review. I'm going to start off with a little bit of an analogy here. You know, every once in a while a guy goes out to a flea market or pawn shop and you run across something you just can't live without. And last year, while out and about, I ran across this drill chuck here. I'm not sure who made it. There's no maker's mark on it. Judging by how well it's made, I'm going to have to tip on Room, which is a German manufacturer. Looking at the quality of construction here. So I picked this up for a paltry 15 bucks, and I thought, you know, there may come a time where you're going to need this thing, so go ahead and grab it and take it with you. Who knows, you might be able to use it someday or do a little horse trading. Well, the other day I stumbled across a little bargain in eBay that I thought might be a good buy, and so I went ahead and got it. Price was right, and it's a tabletop drill press from Mannesmann. So let me get this thing out here and we'll do the unboxing and go through it. We'll put it through its paces to see how how out around the spindle is and so forth, and go through the whole thing and see whether or not these things are worth picking up. I'm always harping and carping about the bad quality coming out of tools of China, the bad quality of tools that come out of China. And this thing is probably of either Chinese or Taiwanese manufacture. Judging by, it just looks like everything else that comes out of the same factory in China. So, I mean, from Grizzly to Jet to you name it, they all have that same look. They're the same size, the same. I mean, it's coming out of the same factory. The only thing that's different is the switches and then the color, the color of paint. So let's go set this on the table here and focus in on it. So here we go. Here we have the tabletop drill press by Mannesmann. Mannesmann, they still manufacture pipes, seamless pipes. That's what they're most famed for. Up in Remscheid, I think is where they're at in Germany. Let's see here. Yep, Remscheid. No country of origin on the box. I went ahead and cut the tape open. I've been into it already, so let's go ahead and take a look here. Here's probably the chuck. Yep. Now let's take a look at this guy. So here we have the chuck. First glance, nice machine finish, a B16 taper, 1.5 to 3 millimeter capacity, or 1.5 to 13 millimeter capacity, but there's an awful lot of slop in here. There's probably a millimeter of travel here on the axis where this thing actually tilts. So let's close this up. We have on fully closed. There's no space here, but there's still a 0.5 millimeter gap on this part of the jaw, and then about, I don't know, 2 or 3/10 over here on this one. As we open it up, this jaw still protrudes. This one's flush, and this one still protrudes about a 0.5 millimeter. This one's proud by at least almost a millimeter. Then you have a gap over here between the jaw and the outer casing. Same thing here, and here the jaw is actually touching. So right off the get-go, this chuck, you might as well chuck it. I mean, it's junk. So let's go on further through the rest of this thing and see what else we got. Okay, just set the chuck off to the side. So obviously when I put this thing to work, this chuck is not going to go on the machine. So here we have the table, which is has a tilt feature where you can tilt it. There's a scale here. I don't know if that shows up on the camera. I can't really see it with this viewfinder here very well. Hopefully it'll show up. But anyway, this is here's the bolt down here to loosen it up, and then you can tilt it on the column to where this part swivels perpendicular to the column. So I'll put that back in here for now. There's a nice crosshatch finish on the surface of the table here, so the milling of it was pretty good, at least at first glance. So that means the table's probably fairly flat. The paint job on here is leaves a little something to be desired. It's got paint all around the edge, but on the bottom, nada. It's just plain old flash rust. Here's the base, very light duty, weighs maybe 3 pounds tops. It's cast iron. We have a round finish on here, so this looks like it was chucked up on a lathe and planed on leveled out on a lathe on a big faceplate. So let's set this out and set it aside. Here's some bolts, probably for the base, for the column to the base, and then a Allen wrench, and then the handles for the quill. So here we have the head. Well, let's take out the column first. And oh my God. Pictures are worth 1,000 words. Let's take a look here. So our column looks like about a 50 millimeter. Let's grab the old guessometer here. It's 46 millimeters. And the wall thickness approximately 1.5. So this is an awful light duty column. Also something else for the scrap bin. I think I'm going to scrounge me up a piece of heavy duty pipe and make it longer anyway, and a thicker material. So this is something else we can discard later. And now for the working part of the unit, we'll set this off to the side. Here's the head. There's a little ding here in the fan housing. Probably due to transportation. I don't think that was this way from the factory. DHL doesn't exactly treat the packages they transport with great care, so as seen in the DHL fail, this is a 350 watt single phase 230 volt motor, 1300 RPMs, and 5-speed. Now I'm going to have to bring the camera in for a close-up of this. This is something that you've got to behold. You won't believe it when you see it. So, the paint job looks like somebody used a broom on it. So now we're going to look at the belt alignment here. Note here on this pulley, we're on the second pulley from the bottom, and how far this protrudes up. So this pulley has to go down almost a full width of the belt, which isn't a problem. Looks like there's a set screw right there to where we can loosen that up. Plastic pulley, by the way. You know, even cheap Italian motors, they at least put the sticker, or the nomenclature plate on square to the motor. I don't think this thing could get much more crooked. Then we have our quill right here. You can't even turn the end of the quill by hand. Okay, because of this belt alignment, it doesn't want to turn, so we're going to have to align that before we do anything. I imagine this thing is going to make a ruckus to beat the band when you turn it on, so let me park the camera here and pre-assemble this thing a little bit so we can take a little more of a gander at her. So right off the bat, this pig is going to need some major surgery. When we look at the alignment of the pulleys, the motor is completely out of square, not even up to height. There is no set screw in the pulley anywhere to be seen to where we can change the height of the pulley on the shaft. Nope, there's one. Hopefully we can get at that. But then we still have to change the alignment, and also there's not enough travel in this pin right here to allow the belt to be slackened up enough to be able to remove it and change the gears without risking bending something or pulling something severely out of alignment. And the belt doesn't really fit the machine well either. So let me do the surgery on this and try to get this straightened out off camera to where at least we can get something on this thing going. So this is something I thought you might want to see. As you look down the alignment here, the spindle for the quill, or the pulley for the quill, is out of it wobbles something terrible. And pay attention to the belt here, what's going on with it. See how you got a fat part right here, a skinny part right here. The cutting of the belt was absolutely atrocious. And so now as I spin this, you can see the out of round, or the run out I should say, of the quill pulley. So this thing is going to require a lot more surgery than I thought. But the motor turns really nice and smooth. The thing I don't like about it is down here on this, let me bring the camera right here, is actually welded to the motor housing. You gotta love the runs here in the paint. I mean, paint job atrocious. Castings look equally atrocious. Took the switch out here. This is a power off safety switch so that when the power goes off and comes back on, the machine doesn't come back on automatically. let's see, what else did we have to lament about here? The holes here in this mount are way too big. These are M8 bolts going through, or no, M7 bolts I should say. They have a 14mm head, and M8 has a 13mm head, so these are 14s. So these would be an M7, no, not an M7, an M9. I think they're an M8 but thread, but they have a 14mm head, so something is a little goofy here. But like I say, the hole here is too big for these bolts, so you got a lot of excess play here when you loosen this up. So when you try to set the tension on the belt, you got to loosen these bolts up, and then the tensioner on the other side, in order to be able to facilitate changing the belt. And as you can see, the alignment still isn't perfect. Back over here, the belt, both sides are on the same plane, and here you can see back there the back belt is lower, which means the motor itself is still tilted that way. I tried bringing it back up a little bit. I managed to get it up here a little bit, but this is going to take major surgery where I'm going to have to weld this hole shut and then re-drill it 1mm further over in order to compensate for the tilt and bring this thing back into alignment. The Quill handle here, of course these handles here are pretty chintzy, but when you wobble this thing, it has a lot of slop. You can't really see that in there, but there's about 1.5 millimeters of deflection out here where this thing twists this way in the housing. Let's see if we can see that. Yeah, I kind of see it. I've got my, well, anyway, I have to take my word for it. It's a bit sloppy, so this is probably going to have to be redone, rebored, and to make a whole new thingamabob here. Nice spring action. It's only got 2 inches of travel, or 50 millimeters. It's nice and sharp. Rather smooth for as crude as it is. So for small jobs, this, you know, in the wood shop, this thing would be all right. But as far as any kind of heavy-duty machine shop use, no thanks.
Remember quite specific.
Stuck a Tesa indicator here on here, and this is accurate to 1/100th of a millimeter. So let's I got it set almost at 0. I'm going to turn it on now, and you can see there's about 7 thousandths or 7/100ths. It's kind of hard to see because the needle was moving so fast, but we had a range of about 7 increments here on the dial. So here's the other thing, and this is why this column is going to get shit canned. If I put a little pressure up here on the column, I get a deflection. Quite a bit of deflection actually, 25, so that's way too much. The accuracy of the spindle, this is very nicely machined, I gotta say that, and this B16 chuck does fit on here, So I'm going to stick that chuck on there and see how out around it is. And I'll bring you guys back when I get that all set up to where we can actually take a measurement on it. So here's our setup with the chuck in place. The indicator on a drill bit. As you can see, we're getting a little bit of a movement here. It's hard to say if this is deflection from me putting pressure on the tool. But we're still getting the consistent readings, so I'm thinking this is just the outer round of the chuck, or just somehow manufacturing defect in the drill bit. These are from Heller. They weren't real cheap, but they weren't real expensive either, so they may not be the best quality drill bits. But the brad point down here, when you turn this on, let's see here. Let me get some contrast here so you can see this. It's got about a 1/2 millimeter of deflection. As you can see, the indicator shows about the same range that we were seeing before. So I'm thinking it's probably in the drill, in the bit itself. I don't have a pin to stick in this to really measure the run out of the chuck. What I'm going to do is I'm going to swap this chuck for the one that was supplied with it, the piece of junk, to see how bad the run out is on it. Okay, without even sticking the dial indicator on here, just by turning it on, there's quite a bit of deflection here. I'm going to stick the dial indicator on here and see just how much it is, but it's not looking good. Okay. We've got almost 1/2 millimeter of deflection here. Let's turn this thing on. As you can see, we're all over the scale, from 0.4 to 0.1. So from fingers, from way over here to over here, that's over 1/2 millimeter of deflection. I'd say not acceptable. So when you look at the tip down here, you see the same picture. Let me try to focus in here on the brad point. Not the best. So let's go ahead and make some chips. We're going to use the old shitty chuck here that came with the machine. I'm not turning it at full speed, I just stuck it in there. So we got a nice little brad point here. Let's zoom in so you can see that a little better. So I'm going to go over a little bit more here and drill a fresh hole that you'll see here. We get a nice follow through. The tip of the drill is actually doing fairly well. We get a nice good clean hole. So even though this is a shitty chuck, I don't recommend actually using this. It actually kind of works. Let's swap chucks here for a minute and see how the flea market find works on this. So, okay, we get a little bit better tracking on the tip. And again, a nice clean hole, good clean follow through. Here's the, zoom out here. So, here's our first two holes. As you can see, they Got a little bit of a fiber pull here as well. This is due to the drill bit, but overall the chucks seem to perform. This one performs marginally better than the original. So bottom line is the original chuck will work in a pinch. Again, it's going to be more of a good weight for a downrigger than anything else. I mean, you can hear the rattle. Just not acceptable in my book. So here we're looking at the belt, and as you can see, there's already some wear showing. The cords of the belt are actually coming through already. The vulcanization of this rubber probably wasn't all that great. Let's see, here is the manufacturer's mark, and this is the size of the thing. Unfortunately, I can't do anything with these numbers. I've tried to cross-reference them in the internet, and I come up with exactly zilch. And I measured this thing. It's 67.5 centimeters on the OD and 10 millimeters on the width, so that's 3/8. So the quality of the belt isn't all that great. So let's go through a little bit of a cost analysis and a comparison of other machines on the market, such as the Grizzly. So here we're looking at the Grizzly G7942 5-speed baby drill press. This is essentially the same machine as what I've got here. When we look at the pulleys on the top of the machine, identical. The only difference is the switch was moved to the front from the side, and the encasing here, the safety housing, looks a little different, so do the knobs. But other than that, it's essentially the same machine. You got this funky tilt table. Even the base is the same. I wouldn't be surprised if it all had the same mold. They probably, like I said before, all came out of the same factory in either Taiwan or China. And so here we have this model here for $109.95 over here. So that's what you can expect when you get into one of these, and you can see the chuck even looks the same. Claims to be a 1/2-inch chuck, although the one I have here is a 13 millimeter, which is, yeah, it's a 1/2 inch. So these machines are still manufactured and still the same crappy quality. Well, YouTube, let's summarize on this machine here. Did a little bit of a comparison to the Grizzly 7942G, or G42, no, sorry, the G7942. Identical model to this, still manufactured, so it's still in production. Again, Mannesmann did not make this. This is just a private labeled machine. They dabbled in this kind of stuff for a while, where they were supplying craftsmen, hobbyists, you know, with this kind of stuff. Cheap, you know, privately labeled stuff made in China and Taiwan. They still have a range of power tools that they offer up on the market right now. Can't comment on the quality, but if it's anything like this, I would suggest staying away from it if you're any kind of serious either home woodworker or metal worker, or if you're using these tools professionally. Now, in order to make this thing work, like I said before, I've got to put a lot of work into it. Unless you're an accomplished machinist, I would recommend not buying this kind of stuff, just for the simple fact there's just so many things that you got to do to these things in order to make them work. Again, with this machine, it's going to take a new V-belt. The motor mount has to be redone. Some of the screws have to be renewed because they're just not adequate. Some of the holes that the screws go through have to be re-welded shut and then re-drilled. The base, the column has to be replaced. It's just too light duty. There's too much deflection in this thing to be a useful tool. It just flexes too much. You might as well be holding a cordless drill doing your work instead of using one of these things. The handles here on the spindle have to be redone. Even this the Quill drive here has to be redone. I'm not really satisfied with the way that feels inside the machine. Has an awful lot of slop. Now, if it weren't for the chuck I picked up at the flea market here a while back, I'd be having a real hard time with actually applying this chuck. I'd probably be looking to replace it. I mean, you can hear the rattle in this thing. This is just not acceptable quality. I'm sorry, it's just not up to snuff. It will work in a pinch. For those folks out there where accuracy is not an issue, this machine will be, it'll do okay. If you're just drilling the occasional hole in a board, kind of, okay, right there, that's where, then this kind of machine will work. But for what I'm going to be using it for, it's got to be a little more stable than what it is. Now, one of the things I like to see in a machine is the foot or the base of the machine in equal proportion in weight and mass to the working part of the machine. And in this case, we just don't have that. The upper part of it here probably weighs somewhere in the neighborhood of roughly 25 to 30 pounds. And the rest of the machine, I mean, the whole package weighed 23 kilos when it was shipped. So of that 23 kilos of weight of this machine, 10 to 12 is in the head, and all the rest of it's in the base and in the column, and the table. So that doesn't leave a whole lot of mass in order to facilitate, to maintain your accuracy of your work. I might even make a new table for it. This one doesn't seem to deflect too badly if you don't put a whole lot of pressure on it. What I do like about this machine, the spindle accuracy was surprisingly good. That was a definite plus. This makes this a usable machine for me. With this flea market chuck of unknown brand and origin, but judging by how well it's built, I would say it's probably out of European manufacture. It's definitely not out of China from the looks of it. So it's definitely now, it will be a usable machine. Now, again, the handles have to be replaced, the base has to be replaced, the column has to be replaced. I'm not sure about the pulleys just yet. We'll have to wait and see. The V-belt has to be replaced. So there's a lot of things that have to go into this machine before I can actually start really doing some serious work on it. But anyway, that's kind of a rundown on the Mannesmann tabletop drill press or benchtop drill press. I'm not one to whine and crab about a crappy paint job, but when you're putting out quality of this, or this kind of quality, somewhere along the lines you're going to have to make up for the shortcomings in aesthetics, and they definitely didn't do that in this case. I mean, the only thing that they got going for them is the cosmoline soaked paper on the surfaces of the exposed metal. Other than that, you saw the details in the paint that make it look like somebody grabbed a broom and went to town on it. So anyway, YouTubers, I hope you got something out of that little rundown on this benchtop drill press. I'd like to thank all the subscribers that keep coming back for more torture and punishment on this channel. And if you have any questions or comments, by all means, don't be shy. Leave a comment in the comment section below. Always like to hear from you. In particular, you know, any suggestions or technical details that you might want to know. Always happy to answer your questions. It's never an issue. So anyway, we'll say adios for now, and hope to see you again soon.